Hello everybody and welcome back to the Timlin22 YouTube channel. Today we're going to be opening 4 packs of the new Magic set Wilds of Eldraine. We have one of each type of booster. That would be a collector booster, set booster, and draft. And we decided to pick up an extra collector booster for you guys because we haven't been on the channel in a while. So let's get right into it. So first pack we'll open up is just the basic draft booster right here. We're hoping to get either the Doubling Season or the Rhystic Study. You can sort of see what we have in the pack right there. They keep making these packs harder and harder to get into, don't they? There we go. Okay, so we're going to reveal them from the back because I think the rare is the front. But we have a Wicked and Curse token. That's one of the new, let's see here, there we go. Yeah, that's one of the new roll mechanic cards, I believe. So we'll just put that there and we'll start flipping them over from the back. So the first card we have is Ice Out. It's a counter spell and you can sacrifice something to make it a bit cheaper. It'll probably be useful in limited, but I don't see it getting into most decks over Counterspell unless you want a budget option. Next card we have is Sweet Tooth Witch. It looks good for maybe the food synergies. Probably not something I'm going to play much, but yeah, probably good for your limited deck if you want to run any food options. Next we have Vantress Transmuter. So 3/4, it goes on an adventure. You can tap a creature and create a cursed roll. So we saw earlier that token, that's part of those rolls. And otherwise it's just a vanilla 3/4, so probably not the best unless you need to really curse something, but yeah. Next we have a Wicked Visitor. So this is an enchantment removal strategy. Probably pretty mid. I don't think this card's going to see a lot of play. Next card we have is Bestial Bloodline. It's an enchantment, fairly standard green enchantment that does some extra stuff nowadays. Common. Again, might see some limited play, that's about it. Oops, sorry everybody, that was just my camera setup falling over. I'll get that set back up for you shortly. There we are. Okay, next card we have Bespoke Battle Garb. Hope you guys can see that alright. It's an equipped creature, gets +2/+0, and if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield, you can attach it up to 1 target creature you control. So yeah, it'll probably be okay in like Boros equipment strategies, but again, I doubt this sees much play. Next we have Red Tooth Genealogist. So another roll card, and other than that, it's basically just a vanilla 2/3, so I don't know how good or bad the rolls are going to be, but yeah, I think that if rolls end up being really good in this set, then it'll be a good card. If not, it'll probably just be a card that gets lost to the annals of time. Next we have Fell Horseman, another adventure card. Similar to Murderous Knight, where it goes back on the bottom of its owner's library, and it's got one of the reanimation strategy adventures, so you'll hopefully be able to draft a couple of these and start reanimate some of your better targets in your deck. Next we have our first white card of the day, Archon's Glory. So another one with that bargain keyword, and if you bargain it, you can get Flying Lifelink and +2/+2. Probably not a bad combat trick. You could probably kill somebody with this, but again, I doubt that you're going to be wanting to pick it up early in the draft. You'll probably be able to pick this up mid-rounds or late. Next, we have Stroke of Midnight, instant removal in white. That's not bad for white. You do give your opponent a human, but I really don't think that's going to be too big of a deal, especially when you're dealing with white removal. That'll probably see a lot of play in white-black decks. Next, we have Royal Treatment. 1 green, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn, and you create another roll token, so a little bit of a combat trick, and again, we'll have to see how rolls do, but probably not too bad as a whole. Next, we have Soul Guide Lantern. We've seen this card in a couple other sets. It's been okay. A little surprised to see it upgraded to an uncommon here, but yeah, I think there's some decks that really take advantage of this card, and then there's other decks that don't want to be playing this card, even though they think that they do. So just make sure that you read up on how to use that card properly if you're going to use it in any of your decks. Next, we have our rare, which is Spectre of Mortality. So it's a 3 black for a 3/3 Spectre with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you can exile one or more creature cards from your graveyard, and when you do, each other creature gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards exiled this way. I'd say that this card is probably okay. Again, might be something where you've got a lot of like you're doing like a mill strategy, you got a lot of cards in your graveyard and you don't really need them anymore, then you can use it as a board wipe. Otherwise, it's kind of mid, and I don't think people will be playing this card very much. Next, we have our enchantment card, our Prismatic Omen. So lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. I think this card is going to be really good in Commander, and I know it doesn't see a ton of play, but at least not in any of the decks I've seen, but I feel like that's really good in like a 5-color deck. You can fix your lands, and it doesn't just apply to basic lands. So if you're playing any, tap lands, you can get all 5 colors of mana whenever you need them. Now, of course, they still only tap for 1, but it certainly helps you with fixing. So that's definitely a good card, and I'm glad to see we pulled that. And finally, we have a basic swamp. So, pretty good first pack there. I'll put the Prismatic Omen off to the side. And then we'll get into the set booster. So we'll open that up. Ooh. Oh, there we go. We got one of the signed art cards. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of those, but I really like the art cards. I know some people don't, but to me they're pretty cool. And apologies for some of the sirens in the background, but yeah, it looks like Ashiok as well. Yep, Ashiok with good manipulators. So it's a shame we didn't get that in real card, of course, but we'll certainly take one of the gold signature art cards. Okay, and then there's another one of the roll tokens. This one's Monster and Sorcerer. I do not know exactly what the correlation is. I'm going to assume that's from the back in these. I haven't opened these before, so we'll just flip it from the back and we'll see how we go. So we have a basic island to start us off. Not fancy, or full art rather. Pardon me for a second, just rearranging some of my cards. Okay, first we have a Besotted Knight, so another one of the adventure cards. I'm sort of a mixed fan of the adventures. Some of them are quite good, some of them just seem to be a reason to overcost the card. Like this is on face value, a 4-mana 3/3, and even the Betrothed the Beast is probably only good if the Royal roll ends up being really good. So yeah, again, rolls, they're going to be sort of the make or break if you're drafting. Oh, speaking of adventure cards, here's another one, Aquatic Alchemist. This is a 2-mana 1/3. When you cast your first instant or sorcery spell, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and for 2 and a blue, you can put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. So that'll probably be a decent card in like Izzet strategies. Get your instants or sorceries back, anything that's maybe like a game ender or anything like that. If you need to cast it again, or even just like a good spell that you cast earlier in the game and then gets a bit more power for when you cast that first instant or sorcery spell. And you can count that buff on the other turn. Oh, we got another Ventress Transmuter. Just gonna skip over that one because we've seen that card already before. Next we have a Graceful Takedown. So another, it's a fight spell. For this one's for enchanted creatures. So any number of the target enchanted creatures you control and up to one other target creature you control each deal damage to their power to target creature you don't control. So if you've got a lot of like really weak enchanted creatures, or if you've got one or two really powerful ones, you can team up to take down somebody else's really powerful enchanted creature. I think that card's a little bit more awkward than some of the other deal power spells, like maybe like a Rabid Bite, but still think it'll be alright. After that, we have a Tanglespan Lookout. So it's a 3-mana 2/3 satyr. I see that they're sort of pushing back on the vanilla, so no 3-mana 3/3s or 3-mana 4/4s that we've seen in the past couple sets. But whenever an aura enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So another sort of half Enchantress is uncommon. Probably will see some play in like Selesnya Enchantress decks, but maybe not too much. Next, we have an Edgewall Inn. Enters the battlefield tapped. You can choose a color. You get a mana of the chosen color. And then you can sacrifice it and return target card that has an adventure from it from your graveyard to your hand. So probably best in the blue-black. Seems to me like there's maybe like a blue-black Reanimator type strategy that you can use with the adventures. So that'll probably go in that. Other than that, I really don't see this card seeing much play unless you're running like a Brazen Borrower or something like that. Next we have, we got ourselves a mythic here, Kellen the Fey-Blooded. So it's a human fairy with adventure. So the adventure is 1 and a white, but it costs 2 and a red. The adventure is Birthright Boon, and it says search your library for an aura or equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. And then Kellen itself is 2 and a red for a 2/2 with double strike. And other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen the Fey-Blooded. So I believe that this will definitely see play as a Boros equipment commander, because I have seen some of those decks pop off, and I really think that this will be a really good card because it buffs all your other creatures, it has double strike itself, and you can just pump it with a whole bunch of abilities and kill people with commander damage. Next, we have a Season of Growth. Whenever the creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1, and whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, draw a card. This is quite good on Arena. I do enjoy putting this card in my decks on Arena. You get the free scry, and then if you're targeting your creature, you get to draw a card, of course, if you're using like your giant growths or anything else like that. So yeah, I mean, even just a scry each turn is quite good. And it's in green. Next, we have a rare from the enchantment set, which is called Rest in Peace. When it enters battlefield, you exile all graveyards. So it seems to me like there's a lot of graveyard shenanigans in this set. And then if a card or token will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So if you're going to be running this card, it's going to be against graveyard hate, and we shall see how that card does. And finally, we still got a couple more cards. We got another one from the, I don't know how many of these you're supposed to get in the set booster, but so far we have had 3 of them. And Oppression, whenever a player casts a spell, that player discards a card. So if you're playing Death and Taxes, white-black, there you go. There's your Oppression. And finally, there we go. We have a foil Experimental Confectioner. So 2 and a black for a 2/3, you get a food, and whenever you sack a food, you make a 1/1 rat with this creature can't block. So I believe that this card has been doing very well in the limited rats deck. I've heard a lot of like doubling season rat strategies going on, so I would assume that I haven't played the pre-release, so I didn't get an opportunity to, but I would assume that this card has been doing work in either food strategies or anything that you have doubling season. Anyway, now we're on to the collector boosters. I wish they didn't put as much glue on these. Okay. Put that off to the side. So we have ourselves a double-sided food token. There it goes again. I'm sorry, everybody. I bumped the setup. There's the double-sided food token. Unfortunately, I'm on a bit of a budget setup right now because of constraints. But anyway, looks like there's a whole bunch of good cards at the back, so we'll again go from or at the front. So we'll again flip that. Let me know if you get Okay, first card. Obviously, everything in this pack is foil. We have a Balluna's Gatekeeper, another one of those blue adventure cards. Another one of those return target creature you don't control with mana value 3 or less to its owner's hand, and then a 6/5 vanilla for 6. Again, it's an okay card. I don't think, like, it's blue, so I mean, you take a 6 mana 6/5 in blue, but realistically, I don't think this card sees any play outside of limited. Next, we have a Leaping Ambush. Target creature gets +1/+3 and gains reach. Untap it, so good against the flyers, like any of your fairies or anything else like that. Otherwise, Oh, I got that. Okay, there we go. I'll try to keep my hands behind the camera this time. Okay, next we have a Tuinville Guide, so it's a 3 mana 2/3 with flying, and it also has the Celebration mechanic, which means that if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+0 and has lifelink. Again, a 4 mana 3/3 with flying and lifelink is not bad, but I also think that this card is probably just a limited card, and even at that, it's not that great. Next, we have a Unassuming Sage. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 and attach a Sorcerer Roll token to it. So you can either make it a 4 mana 3/3 with whenever it attacks, it scries 1, or you can just play it as a 2/2. Again, I would imagine this card sees play in roll decks and limited, but nothing else. Okay, we are into uncommons now with Troyan, Gutsy Explorer. I always like to see a Simic card. I tend to play Simic Commander decks or Simic base decks. It has tap to add green-blue, and you can spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 5 or greater, or spells with X in their mana costs. But again, I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue in Simic. And then for blue and tap, you can draw a card and then discard a card. So yeah, this card could be a good budget commander for people who have some powerful Simic cards coming out of this set. Next, we have Cheeky House Mouse. I will admit I like the name on that. Apologies if you can't really see that, but it's got the adventure Squeak By, which says target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn and can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater this turn, and is otherwise just a 1 mana 2/1, so I think that card will see play in white. I mean, 1 mana that isn't just a 1/1 and has an adventure is quite good in my eyes, so I could definitely see that card getting play in sort of a white-red aggro deck, or perhaps even an Arkellan deck. Next up, we have Knight of the Sweet's Revenge. So when it enters, you make a food token. Foods now can tap for and add for a green. And if you pay 5 and 2 green and sacrifice it, if you get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of foods you control. Now you can only do this as a sorcery, but it's sort of a slow build green card. You get a little bit of value, and then once you get up to that 7 mana, and if you're playing certainly that food deck that I've mentioned a couple times, or the rats deck, you can get a whole bunch of value and just trample over your opponents. And before we get into the fancy cards, we have a foil Plains. Okay, here's our first fancy card. Start with a Knightly Valor. You enchant a creature, make a 2/2 white knight, and enchanted creature gets 2/2 and has vigilance. So fairly boring standard card. Nothing really to write home about. If you're playing a knight's deck, probably fine, but certainly not something that I'm planning on running. Next, we have a foil Impact Tremors. This card is really good if you're playing anything that puts in a lot of creatures or a lot of tokens. Obviously, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if you're playing Commander, you got a lot of tokens entering the battlefield, the damage quickly adds up, and I have definitely died to this card before. Next, we have, there's our boy, foil Ashiok. We obviously got him earlier with the art card, the signature art card, and now we have him as a foil Planeswalker. A little bit of a shame not to get him as the maybe like a borderless feature in this instance, but I'll certainly take him as a foil. And he says, if you'd play life, well, your library has at least that many cards in it, and instead you exile that many cards from the top of your library. So really good at, you know, if you're doing, like, say, like a necropotent strategy or something like that, you can sort of exile some of the cards instead of paying your life. If you uptick, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, put the other into your hand. You downtick it, you create 2 1/1 Black Nightmare creature tokens, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if a card was put into exile, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. And its ultimate is target player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the total mana value of cards you own in exile. So, could be good as a mill strategy, could just be good as a black commander. 5 loyalty for 5 mana is pretty decent, and I think that card's going to be very interesting going forward to see what people can do with it in Commander. Next, we have a borderless, I believe that's borderless, or at least an extended art card of Fairy Slumber Party. So for 6 mana, you Cyclonic Rift, and for each opponent who controlled a creature returned this way, you create 2 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying, and this creature can only block creatures with flying. So if your opponent has a lot of creatures out, you don't really have much going on, this definitely can help turn the tide this way, because you can create as much as 6 blue fairies and help you rebuild your board a bit faster. Next, we have a Cruel Somnophage, another one of those black-blue adventure decks, or adventure cards, rather. Can't wake up, your target player mills 4 cards. Of course, we saw that on Merfolk Secret Keeper in the original Throne of Eldraine, although that was only 1 blue, but still a pretty good card. And then Cruel Somnophage's power and toughness are each equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards, so sort of a I'm blanking on the name. Tarmogoyf, that's the name of it, I'm sorry. Tarmogoyf effect, obviously doesn't get the +1, but sort of a Tarmogoyf effect, and you can force your opponent to mill, so, or if you're trying to do some recursion, you can mill yourself, and seems like it'll be a fairly decent card. Next, we have Fiery Emancipation. Interesting that it's been downgraded to rare, because it, of course, came out as a mythic, but what it does is it triples the damage that you do to any target permanent or player. So, especially if you're running an Impact Tremor, suddenly you're doing 3 damage to each player, and yeah, just sort of good combo piece in red. And finally, we have a Blind Obedience in foil. So this has Extort, and artifacts and creatures your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. So another one of those cards that's really good in like a Death and Taxes. You can force your opponents to have everything enter tapped. You can play it with one of those other cards that we pulled earlier that, you know, forces your opponents to have all their creatures that go into the graveyard be exiled instead. That was, Oppression, of course. And yeah, I think that that'll be interesting. Another interesting card. Of course, the enchantment cards are just taken from Magic's history, but I haven't opened a lot of enchantments and a lot of older packs, so I don't know. I'll have to play with these cards and test them out. And on the other side of the food token, we have a nice stylized beast token. Really like that card. Okay, and finally, I know this video is getting a bit long, but we have our final Wilds of Eldraine collector booster. Pretty decent opening so far. Of course, I'd really like to see the anime doubling season or Ristic Study or something, but yeah, I mean, I'm really not upset with the cards that we've opened so far. Unfortunately, this last pack seems to be causing me some issues, so let's see, give me a second. Okay, we opened it on the corner there, as you can see. So, we got ourselves another food token. Okay, we're just going to sort of breeze through the commons this time, because I Don't want this video to be too much longer than what it is already. So we got Shatter the Oath, destroys the target creature or enchantment, and you get a Wicked Roll. It's an okay card, a little bit overcosted, and at sorcery speed probably won't see much play outside of limited. Next we have a Minstrosity. So it's I do like the flavor on that, quite literally. It's made out of candy canes and it's called Minstrosity. And when it dies, you create a food token. So pretty good flavor card there. Good job, Wizards of the Coast. Oh, foil Aquatic Alchemist. A Territorial Witchstalker. Of course, earlier in Throne of Eldraine, we saw a Fierce Witchstalker. This one has Defender, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, it gets +1/+0 and can attack this turn. So, 2 mana, 2/3 with Defender that can become a 3/3 without Defender if you got a creature with power 4 or greater. It's not bad. Next, we have a Gingerbread Hunter. This one's a green-black adventure card with Puny Snack. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and when it enters the battlefield when you cast it normally, you get a food token. So, pretty decent card. Nice sort of looking. Again, I like the flavor of the Throne of Eldraine set. Nice fairy tales and everything else. Next we have Spellscorn Coven. So, yet another one of the blue-black adventure cards. This one returns a target spell to its owner's hand, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So you can sort of see how it works into the whole idea of getting value off your adventures, either by countering your opponent's spells or by forcing your opponent to discard cards and mill and whatnot, and then getting creature cards back from your graveyard. Next we have a Chancellor of Tales, which is a 4 mana 2/3 with flying, and whenever you cast an adventure spell, you may copy it. So there we go, another card that you can throw into the adventure deck, copy all your adventures, and get great value. We have a Foil Island. I do like the... I am a fan of the full art cards that they have been doing for the island, like the lands lately. It gives a new spice to the basic lands. Okay, the first card we have is a regular Impact Tremors. We obviously pulled the foil version earlier, so just putting that down where the other one is. Next we pull a Curiosity, so 1 blue for an enchantment. It says whenever enchanted creature deals damage to opponent, you can draw a card. I've seen this ability on a couple creatures recently. For 1 blue, it's probably an okay enchantment, you know, if you're playing blue, but certainly nothing that's bomb-worthy, shall we say. Next we have a Raging Battle Mouse. So the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less, and at the beginning of combat, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, target creature you control gets +1/+1. So good for getting celebration triggers off and just making all your stuff cheaper. Next we have, a Layla, Cunning Conqueror. That's from the Commander sets, I believe. So it's a 4 mana 2/4 with flying, Fairy Warlock. Whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, you create a 1/1 black Fairy Rogue. And whenever 1 or more fairies you control deals combat damage to a player, you goad target creature that player controls. So obviously something to use with like a Bitter Blossom. And yeah, it's a nice looking card. Next we have an Elusive Otter. So 1 mana for a 1/1 with prowess, and creatures with power less than Elusive Otter's power can't block it. So means that you can sort of get in early ideally, and then with Grove's Bounty, pay X in a green and you distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. So yeah, I think that card could be really good with like the Shattered Ozolith that came out in March of the Machine, where you can double the amount of counters and whatnot. Oh, and we got another Rest in Peace. Alright, we just got some people that I don't want. And the last one is a foil Rest in Peace. So interesting that we ended up with 3 rest in pieces. We ended up with a foil elemental. And yeah, that will be the end of the opening. So not too bad, some interesting cards, and we'll see you next time.